are moments in life when you don't get a plan. You just get a pull, a quiet nudge, a curiosity that won't let you go, a knowing that might not make sense on paper, but feels true in your body. And sometimes the bravest thing you do is say yes before you know why. Last summer, I made a last minute decision to fly across the world alone, to attend a women's retreat in Italy and Greece with strangers. And if you know me, this is way out of my comfort zone. I didn't know exactly what I was stepping into, and I didn't know what it would unlock. I just knew that I was at a crossroads after retiring from 31 years of teaching, and something in me was ready for my next chapter. What I didn't know then was that my podcast, my business, and my next chapter would be born there. Welcome to Project U 2.2, the podcast for people who are standing in transition. I'm Carrie, former teacher turned mindset coach for teens and adults. I'm a mom to 3 amazing young men and a woman who knows what it feels like to stand at the edge of reinvention and finally trust herself. Today's guest is someone who played a meaningful role in that moment for me. Mikayla Jai is a mindset coach, speaker, and creator whose work centers on manifestation, self-concept, and becoming the version of yourself who can actually hold the life you want. She is magnetic and adorable. She is brave, she's grounded, and she leads with a calm confidence that you feel the moment you are in her presence. She is also a little younger than I am, and I say that with genuine affection. She would have been one of my favorite students. Mikayla, welcome to Project U 2.2.
Yay! Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to see the production of the podcast because we had talked about it when we were in Greece and Italy. And I am just so honored by your kind words. And I'm a little
Thank
baby
you.
chicken nugget, but we're going to have a great conversation.
Yeah. Mikayla, when I was a teacher, I would put students in the hot seat, and my students and I would ask them 22 questions to get to know them a little bit more. And I'm not going to ask you 22, but I just want to start with a few questions. So are you ready for a quick hot seat?
I'm so ready. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Question 1. Coffee. How many cups a day, honestly?
Honestly, at minimum 2. At minimum, I'm doing 2. I'm usually buying one and I'm making one on the Nespresso at home.
Okay. I remember on our trip, that was a big thing for you. You had to find your coffee.
I had to have my iced coffee.
And you are the slowest coffee drinker I think I've ever met. So
It's true. It's true. I think my average a day would be like 4 cups of coffee if it didn't take me so long to drink them. My
yes.
husband bullies me about it.
How about a word for 2026? Do you have a word that's your focus?
Yes, my word of the year is athlete. And I could probably talk about it for like 7 hours, but here's the most succinct answer I can give you. I wanted a year that had peace and ease and rest, but also like hunger, intense focus, and intentionality. And I feel like that is a professional athlete all wrapped up into one. So it's my athlete year.
I love that. That's not where I thought you were going to take it, but that's awesome. Nice. What is something that people assume about you that isn't true?
Oh, that I'm materialistic, I think is the one people would assume because I love nice things. I love a designer handbag and my Versace shoes and I drive nice cars. But I also have a YSL bag that has a stain from like a candle spill and I still carry the bag. Like I'm like, if I was truly materialistic, I would go and buy the new bag or like get it fixed and perfect before wearing it. I have a pair of Versace shoes that one of my pets chewed up that I still wear. So I feel like that's something people get wrong about me. I love a bougie purchase, but it doesn't mean that much to me.
And you're also a big thrift shopper. So
Yes.
yeah, you counter powder. It's a good balance.
Yes, exactly. Got bougie, classic. The shirt I'm wearing, I thrifted in Paris. So I'm like so on par.
I love it. What still challenges you?
Ooh, I would say patience is a lifelong challenge for me. I want it right now, I want it done, and I want it done right. So being patient with people, with myself is a challenge. And then catching up to my up levels. I am always up leveling and pushing myself and stepping outside of my comfort zone. So it feels like I'm in a constant cycle of catch up, catch up, catch up in a good way, but it is challenging because there's so much you have to let go of every single time you up level your life, habits, patterns, and mindsets. So it's like, okay, how do I get rid of all this while I'm stepping into something new? And while I'm stepping into that new thing, I'm now getting rid of more at the same time. And making sure that it doesn't feel like a rat race. It's kind of finding the balance there.
That is good. Just like, yeah, every year with an iPhone upgrading. That is, I feel like, what you do. And you just had your 28th birthday, is that right?
Yes.
28.
A
Oh.
whole nother upgrade. And then it's like there's milestones like that of okay, now I have now it's the new year, we have an upgrade. Now it's my birthday and there's an upgrade. And then even when I'm launching new and big projects for work that I'm working on, that requires an upgraded version of myself. So it's just the way that we're elevating plus the way that life kind of asks us to elevate is a constant cycle. But I really love a good like hustle. I love a good like chase. I'm very like hungry for success and growth. So it doesn't bother me too much, but it is challenging because you feel like you're constantly getting to know yourself all over again.
I love what you just said so much because I think that some people think that when they're an adult, their learning stops. And I remember hearing, like, oh, learning never ends. And part of my life, I associated that with school, with college. And so I got a degree and another degree. But really, I hope that you and I think both of us will be after you've gone through those just transitions, that even when we're 80, we are still that hungry for growth and for still learning and just growth at 80 and above.
Yeah, I agree. I always joke that I'm like, I'm never gonna retire because I love what I do so much. And a lot of it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like, ooh, I'm making new things and new projects. And I think it was just last year Warren Buffett announced that he was retiring from Berkshire Hathaway. He is 96. And I always say, like, that's gonna be me. I'm gonna be 96. I saw him speak at the Berkshire Hathaway big event they do in Nebraska in May. And he's just this little old man drinking his smart water with a Coke, a regular Coke, not Diet Coke. Worst nightmare for me. I'm a Diet Coke girl all the way. But his little Coke and his little smart water. And he's like, yeah, this is gonna be the last year for me. And I'm like, that's me. Like where you're so hungry to keep going and be yourself, but also like bend and try new things. And I just find that so fascinating. And I don't think that that goes away. I think being curious and hungry is an identity and a personality trait.
And one I think that could be learned too. So, yes, I agree. Who or what grounds you when life is feeling messy or big?
My husband, for sure, he's a godsend. I like the craziness he has to listen to, even when I'm putting together crazy ideas like the private jet for the retreat. He's like, "You're gonna do what?" And I'm going through every step of the process. I'm like, "This plane fell through, that pilot fell through, we can't get a crew, it's not working. I gotta figure." He's like, deep breath. If anybody can figure this out, it is you. And he keeps me so grounded. And I think it's also because he's a little bit crazier than I am, which is very hard to top. But he is like the more if you can believe it, the more dramatic version of me. And so it makes me feel like, oh yeah, I can be grounded because he's on another level of crazy.
He's the crazy, yes.
He's the
I
crazy one.
know. I can't wait to meet him. I've heard so much about him. What version of yourself are you most proud of becoming?
Hmm. This is an interesting one. I think one of the versions of myself I'm most proud of being is a wife, which I never thought that would be my answer because my whole life I did not want to get married. Every single couple I knew growing up, like everybody's parents, all divorced. Like I had never seen an actual successful marriage long term. And then my parents are divorced. So I was like, well, marriage is just not for me. I was so like hyper independent. Like, I don't need a man. I can take care of myself. So it was just something I never thought I would ever do. I knew I would have a long-term relationship, but I think I'm most proud of myself for putting that down and seeing it's like other people's experiences are not my own. Being hyper independent is a trauma response. And it's okay to be vulnerable and be open. And it's also okay to need somebody. Like as humans, we need community. And so I think I'm most proud of that because it's a more like softer, vulnerable side of me that for a really long time I just would not let myself go there or feel those feelings.
Hmm. I love that. And I think it's so true. And you guys, how long have you been married?
February will be, oh my God, this is like a trick question. What year is it?
I know,
I
2026.
think February is our third anniversary. It feels
Okay.
like it's been 7. So honestly,
I was
I forget.
Yeah, I was gonna say just listening to you talk about him, it just does seem like such a deeper relationship that's very solid and so good for you.
Oh,
When
thanks.
when people look at your life now,
Mm.
I think that it's probably easy for them to just assume that you have so much confidence and certainty that has always been there. So that's rarely true for anyone. So when you look back, what did early courage look like for you?
Early courage. I think a lot of it came from I have to. Almost as like I have to do this. I have to show up and I have to put on this confidence and I have to take this leap for myself. And I think for a long time it was just because I'm so used to taking care of myself and I had to grow up at a young age. It was like, okay, well, I have to work 3 jobs while in high school and I have to do this, I have to do that. But then over time it was more it shifted from a need to a desire of like, oh, okay, well, I have to go for this because I owe it to myself. I have to take this leap, even though I'm uncomfortable, because I know that that's going to connect me to my ultimate manifestation. So early on, now it doesn't feel like, okay, we have to do this. Now it's like a easy done, yes. And I also have years and years and years of evidence of things working out for me. But at the beginning, it really started with like, Mikayla, you have to do this. It's time to buck up. You can be nervous, you can be scared, you can be a little bit shy, but we're going to do it all the way.
Mm. That's so true and so brave because oftentimes I think people get stuck because it's scary to take that action and to not know where you just pushed yourself to do it and trusted and learned along the way. And the confidence came and the certainty came after taking action.
Yeah.
Mhm,
I think that
mhm.
that's a piece that a lot of people get nervous about is like figuring it out on the way. A lot of people want that security of having the full 12-step plan, like ready to go. Especially nowadays with ChatGPT, people are like, I need the 12-week plan to do X, Y, and Z. And they don't even follow the plan, but just seeing the plan mapped out gives them extra courage to go and start taking action. And I have just been courageous for such a long time, and I love using the word relentless, like, just been relentless about figuring it out and just bringing my fear along with me of, like, I might not know the plan, I might not know how I'm gonna figure this out, but it's like, okay, I think about my fears, like, putting on a backpack. I'm like, "Great, hop in the backpack, like, we're gonna go, we're gonna figure this out. You can be in the passenger seat, but I'm in the driver's seat." So I know at the end of the day, I am going to figure it out because I have to and because I want to.
I remember on our retreat, you sharing a story about sitting in your room with sticky notes all over as you tried to figure out the beginning stages of what you really do now. So, talk about that and how that trust arrived before you were maybe even ready for it.
Yeah. Oh man, I just actually recently found a photo of my apartment where I had all these sticky notes. There was shit all over the walls everywhere. It was like I could wake up and see one vision board, or I could wake up and see another vision board, and I use sticky notes for everything. And I think for me, it was like, okay, I know I'm meant to do something massive. I know that I have this level of drive most people don't. And I had also changed my life so much that I'm like, I could teach this to people because the drive and the focus and like the calling I felt is not something that I felt 5 years prior, even. And I'd had this big spiritual awakening where I was kind of like, okay, my entire life has changed because I followed these steps, and I just wrote down all of these steps on sticky notes. Like, what is everything I've done to change my life? And let me piece it together. Like, what are my favorite parts? What actually worked? What was fun but didn't produce a result or didn't make me feel differently about my identity? And really fine tooth combed through everything to kind of figure out like what was the business going to be and what was the most effective way to help people. Because I knew that if I could change my life, I could change other people's lives. And I wanted to do that in the most effective way, I guess.
Where do you think that drive that you had came from? Because people want quick results. And when things take time, it's hard to hang in there, and you just kept pushing. So where do you think not everyone has that kind of drive? Where did that come from?
Yeah, totally. My relentless nature is something I've had for a lot of my life. I think one, the drive to do things differently has always been me because my dad growing up was an entrepreneur. So that was already different. And then I was also like a great student and I was super smart, but I was also really involved. And I remember one thing I loved so much about my high school is it wasn't like clicky. Like everybody had their groups, but I was friends with show choir kids and I was a cheerleader and I was in honor society. It's like you were friends with everybody. So for me, I was always like, ooh, okay, I'm already different. I already have a different drive and a different energy. And I always felt like the weird kid. Like I always felt so different. So I think I just mustered up this identity over time. Like I'm just different than other people. I do things differently than other people. And then my drive really came from having to grow up quickly because I'm like, I lived alone at 15. And so I remember standing in what was my parents' master bedroom and looking at myself in the mirror and being like, I don't have to go to school if I don't want to. No one here is going to make me. If they call my parents, they're not even going to answer the phone. Like it doesn't matter. And I remember thinking like, what path am I going to take? Because I think what is typical and what is the statistic would just be not go to school, drop out, whatever, go down that path and let life take over in victimhood. Or there is, well, I'm different and I'm not that. And I don't want to be a statistic. And I already have this identity where I'm not like the regular person. So I'm actually going to keep going to school and I'm still going to be in all these clubs and I'm still going to have a job and I'm still going to figure it out. Comes back to identity because that's just who I am and what I've decided to do. And that carried with me for a really long time. And I felt like it became a big piece of my personality of like, I'm crazy. I do crazy stuff. I do what people don't expect. I love being like a walking plot twist. So I think it really starts from your identity, everything all of the time. And where people struggle to have that same relentless nature, it's because they don't identify with it. And so I always like to bring that to people. It's like, well, what is your identity? I have always had this like, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to do it. I was an athlete growing up. I was a competitive cheerleader on a travel team. So it's like I had that athlete side of me too. And so I just took pieces of these identities from all my life and molded it into a version of myself who can pretty much execute on demand. But a lot of us don't realize that we have that power, that like you can just put it all together like a big puzzle.
hmm I really love that you talked about the victimhood because your childhood and growing up wasn't the typical all American childhood that most people are blessed to have. And so, as a teacher, I had several students who went through similar experiences, and you would just see how different people react to that. And so many get into that victim mentality. Did you ever have moments like that, or were you just go the whole time?
No, totally victimhood mode for years, truly. Like in high school when my home life started to kind of implode, I was like captain of the victimhood team. Like I was like number one in charge. I self-identified as being pessimist. Like I will never forget this random conversation I had with my mom and I was just complaining about life and being negative and she was like, "You're being so negative." And I literally looked her in the eye. I said, like, "I'm a pessimist. That's what we do." Like that was my identity, which is crazy to think about now because I'm so different. But I was all up in the victimhood. Why me? My life is so hard. The world owes me something. People should be easier on me because I'm dealing with X, Y, and Z at home. Like, must be nice for them. Like, I had all of that. And it was so detrimental to my life in a way that we don't realize. And I think this is that shift alone is why I really wanted to start my business, because I didn't know that positivity and optimism was an option that you could just pick. I didn't know that instead of going down the what if negative rabbit hole, I could do positive what ifs and view things differently. I didn't know that I could look at a challenge like living alone at 15 as something to boost my confidence versus, dang, like my friends' lives are so much easier than mine. And I remember my first time having this moment of awareness that I needed to change the victimhood mode. I was living in this house that I call the raccoon house, and it was like so disgusting. And it was not the vibe. We'll just say that. And like raccoons fell through the ceiling one time. So there's just like that little bit of the story. But yeah, I just remember looking around and being like, this is not the life I want to live. Like, how did I get here? How is this my life? How is this where I'm living? I was so negative. I was out of shape. I felt uncomfortable in my body. And I just remember, again, looking at myself in the mirror. It's always a mirror moment with me and thinking like something has to change and it has to start with me. It has to, because I couldn't change where I was living at the time. I couldn't change my living situation, who I was living at. I couldn't change a lot of it. So I was like, but I can change myself and how I view things. And I genuinely believe that's just a divine download I got, because nobody around me was talking that way either. I didn't have that positive influence around me. And I was just like, okay, if I can change myself, I can only hope. I don't know, but I can only hope that everything around me will get better. And it did. And I made a vow to myself for that whole summer, because it was in between college semesters, that I wouldn't gossip, I wouldn't be negative, I wouldn't complain. Like anything low vibe was completely cutting out of my life. I wouldn't have that negative self talk. And that's what changed the victimhood, because the victimhood was just me complaining about my life and wanting to stay small and have things handed to me, essentially, because for so much of my life I had to work what I felt was extra hard to get what I wanted. And I just felt like, oh, things should be easy for me. And life doesn't owe you anything. And you actually feel way more accomplished when you go out and you continue to overcome obstacles and circumstances that aren't your fault. Like you end up feeling better and you get to kind of add that to your identity repertoire of like, yeah, I'm somebody who overcomes hard shit, and I'm not going to stop until I'm on the other side. So that's kind of like what my victimhood journey had looked like, because I was sick of my own shit. Like honestly, I was like, this house is disgusting. My room's disgusting. I am so much bigger than this. Like we've got to change.
That was so powerful. And I love your story. I think when you're in the thick of it, it's hard. I'm sure it was emotional, and the lens that you can shift and look through, you're so right. And even as adults in life and in different stages of our lives, we can fall into that spiral where we're complaining, we're negative, and you don't even realize it. And it affects your whole bubble, everyone you're around. And so to really just regroup, refocus. And I love your little mantra that you had that summer, the no complaining, no gossiping, just to stay positive and to look at life through that lens is amazing. And I truly think that everything you went through at such a young life, I mean, you were not just alone at 15, but you also, as a big sister, had this a little bit of responsibility to your younger brother. And so that's heavy. And then to still continue to go to college and to not just quit. I just think that really shaped and formed who you are today.
Yeah. Yeah. It was hard, honestly. And even going into the little vow of like, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. That was hard. And that was so challenging, because it becomes this habit and this pattern that you literally pattern yourself into thinking those ways. And I had to say, like, this is not working for me. That's why I have to do something different for the first time in my life, essentially. That's not like, oh, I'm going to try a new sport or I'm going to enter myself in this competition. It's like, no, I'm literally going to change the way that my brain works. And I remember during that summer, I had studied abroad in France, and that was one of the things that really helped shape this because I thought to myself, great, this is the vow I'm making. I've got to change. Nobody knows me on this trip I'm going on. And that's one thing that really helped me birth my retreats. I was like, you go and you don't know anybody. And so you get to decide how you want to show up and how you want to crack open and who you want to be. There's so much transformation that happens in that. And I remember going on this study abroad trip. There were people from my school, but I didn't know any of them. I didn't have classes with a single one of them. So I was like, well, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up as? And I remember thinking, I just want to be the version of Mikayla I've always wanted to be, who lights up the room that she walks into, who makes people feel seen and held and felt, who is a good friend and a great listener and a fun person to be around. And I got to go and be that. But then I would come back to my room after school and drinking wine and doing all the things we were doing in France and laying in bed at my house I was staying in and journaling and journaling and journaling and be like, oh my God, there's so many urges in me that want to complain. I'm walking to and from school in France. It's 90 degrees. There's no air conditioning. I'm sweating. Everything feels sticky. I feel gross. It's like, I can't let out any of that. And that might be a little bit of, my dad, he was a Marine. So I'm like, that might be a little Marine thinking, like we're cold turkey cutting things. And I'm not saying that works for everybody, but I knew that's what would work for me of like, there's all these things I'm holding in of the ways that my brain used to work that I'm fighting against. So it's also exhausting, but it was so worth it to be like, Mikayla, we are not going there. That's not who we are now. This isn't easy, but it's totally worth it. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up in the stickiness is it's hard and it's exhausting to change who you are, but it's so worth it. And you have to be able to see that vision or have people in your life around you that can see and hold that vision for you.
Mhm. When you were talking about just deciding, I think that is so important because even something as small as like people could practice this, going to an event, a party. I remember in high school when I went to drum major camp and didn't know anyone. It is, you have to have that little conversation with yourself, like, okay, who am I going to go in there and show up as? And not that we're being fake and putting on a front, but we could go in as the quiet version of us, and I'm more of an introvert, or we could turn it on and go and be brave and make new friends. And then I remember doing that all day and you're on and then coming back to the room and taking a shower and then like releasing where the tears came because it was so hard to just push yourself. But it's so important to do that and to just be, it's a mental choice sometimes until it becomes more second nature.
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%. And I love that you share that story. And that's why I like to say, like, with my study abroad story, I don't talk about that as often, but it's like I would come back to my room and just dump into my journal and be like, oh my God, like, this is so hard. Or be like, even something so small as being like, oh my gosh, these girls at lunch were like talking about somebody's outfit that they didn't like. And I just sat there, was dead silent. And it's like, and part of me felt like so awkward, but I also didn't want to engage in that. And it's like, so there's that battle that happens at the same time. But back to your point about the decision making, it's like, but when you make that decision and you actually decide, like I've heard this recently, the difference between a decision and a choice is like, you can always choose something else after. Like you could choose a meal at dinner, but then not like it and choose something else. When you decide you're going to buy a house, you're buying the house, your name's on a piece of paper. Like decision feels so much more concrete. So when you make an actual decision, not just a choice, you've got to show up for that. And it's up to you to fully see it through. But for me, I take decisions very, very seriously. Like when I decided we were doing a private jet for the retreat, before I even launched the retreat, I knew I wanted to do that. And I was like, I don't care what I have to overcome, who I have to talk to, how many phone calls I have to take. Like, I'm going to make this happen. And when we can be really real with ourselves and honest with the decisions we make and be honest of like, am I honoring that decision or not? It makes it easier to push through when you want to take a shower and cry and just be like, oh my God, this is a lot, right? But it's like, okay, it's a lot, but I'm honoring my decision. I'm going to go back out there tomorrow and I'm going to do it all over again. And the boost in confidence and certainty is just indescribable.
Yeah, I agree. And with all of the responsibility you had at such a young age, and honestly, you still amaze me and carry so much responsibility. And I think sometimes that could harden people or just shut them down, even. And you kind of mentioned that a little bit with relationships, like that was hard for you. You didn't see yourself being married because of that. So when you don't have those constant, maybe support or adults to lean on, how do you pull through that?
That's such a good question. I'm like, how do I? I have no idea. Me and my journal and my husband and my dogs. I think I hold a lot. I really do. And I have for a long time. And there have been phases of my journey where I felt like I was so responsible for so much that it felt heavy. And I think this is something that I've really had to shift over the past few years of pressure versus I can hold responsibility. Because when you have a lot of responsibility, you feel like a lot of weight on your shoulder. But then when it feels like pressure, you're not being the best version of yourself. Because even on this journey and growing my business and being the main provider of my household, it's like I've had phases where I'm like, this is so heavy. It's again like a micro victimhood moment of like, I just want somebody to take the pressure off and handle this. And why do I have to handle all that? And you see, like, oh, there's the victimhood coming out in a different way. So a lot of self-awareness in the moments where I'm holding that responsibility and learning to shift it. And what I've been telling myself the past probably 2 years is like responsibility is sexy. Like it makes you feel like you've got your life together, you can handle it. Like women are so impressive the way that we can multitask, we can be coordinating so many things, but also thinking of all of the details. Like we're just so multifaceted. And so it's like, yeah, it's sexy when we can be responsible and show up for ourselves and manage everything. And so I look at it that way of like, oh, a capacity conversation of like, how much can I hold and can I hold those standards? And then what's too much and being honest and having that self-awareness of like, okay, I've really put a lot on my plate. Where do I need to ask for help? Where do I need to dial things back down? But I will say I'm crazy. So usually I don't dial it back down. And I just think, who do I need to be to hold that next level of responsibility? And for me, it's so since I don't have that necessary like traditional support system to lean on, it's really me, myself, and my personalities and my identities. And it's like, all right, well, which one do we need to snap into to hold this? Which one do we need to snap into to feel empowered managing all of this? And when I can be honest with myself about that and be like, hey, you're dropping the ball, we've got some victimhood going on, it makes me want to snap out of it.
I think the key word that stuck out in that whole story is self-awareness.
Mhm.
And that's a skill that is learned as we become more self-aware because the way you're raised, your environment that you're in, all create these opinions and part of your personality. And so just becoming a more self-aware and knowing where we need to stop, where we need to grow, where we need to, like you said earlier, what we need to leave behind and walk away from are so important.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're necessary conversations, right? And it's like, I'm even thinking about one of the big things I'm adding onto my plate in 2026 is I'm hosting my very first conference this year, which is exciting, scary, big. I've sold out so many events and podcast lives and retreats after retreats after retreats, but I've never done a big conference where it's like multi-day, over 100 people there. It's a lot of new responsibility on top of like that experience, hosting, being on the people, but also all of the team members that are going to be behind it, right? It's like, okay, so we've got social media team, camera people, video people, event coordinator, like everything under the sun, right? Even speakers that we'll have. So the coordination of that. And it's like, oh shit, okay, this is a lot. And being self-aware of like, where am I gonna have to make changes so I can fully show up for that? Like what is gonna have to change in my training, physically taking care of my body so I can show up in the best way for that? Where do I need to shift what the parts of me that are losing energy, right? Like where am I spending time in the day overthinking when I could be getting something done and trusting myself? Because I can't be at this event for 4 days overthinking, was that talk good enough? Like that just can't happen. And it all comes down to that self awareness of if you want to go do big things and be a bigger version of yourself, you have to be brutally honest with where you're at and see things for what it is. So I'm always looking at when I'm adding things on and kind of going to the next level, I'm like, where do I need to be more self-aware? Where do I need to be honest? And what am I aware of that I'm also avoiding? Because there's always those things that we pretend to not know, but we really know. And when you want to make a big change in your life, you have to be honest and aware.
I think it's harder as you become more aware of growth and looking at people around you in your world and seeing like, oh, it is a little tricky. So many people, I feel like the word manifesting is a big, it has been for years. So talk a little bit about how people, I think, maybe misunderstand that space between making a decision to want something and then getting the result.
Yeah. I could talk about this all day. Man, I started creating content and teaching on manifestation back when people really weren't saying anything. Like in 2020, it became this big buzzword. And I feel partially responsible for that, which makes me very happy. But I remember when I started my podcast, it was like me, Oprah, and like a Law of Attraction, The Secret podcast that would pop up. And people think that like, oh yeah, I'm going to manifest something. I'm going to say I want it and I'm going to really think hard and I'm going to make a pretty vision board and hopefully it will just come knocking on my door. And it's like, well, I decided that's what I want. Great. But then did you show up for the decision? So I love breaking down manifestation and like the textbook definition of it, which is to bring about to the I. It's a verb. And when I think about it, it's like, okay, everything was once made in our minds and then in real life. Like an iPhone was just an idea and then it was created. But there are steps you have to take to actively go and create that. And I think manifestation got this tone to it where it was like this really spiritual woo wishing thing. And it was never that. And I think French is my second language, and they use the word manifestation in French all of the time, but as a bringing about to the I, like it was the manifestation of something. It was the becoming and the making of something. But in English, we add in all this spiritual context, so people get really confused. And when you think about it, like, okay, I had an idea, I made a decision, I'm going to go create that. From there, you always have to think like, what is the first step? And that's what people then miss. They make the decision, they decide they want it. And it for me, I'm always like, okay, well, what makes the most sense to go do first? When I started putting together my conference, I had no idea how it would all come together, but what makes the most sense to start with? And then I trust myself. I'm like, let's name it. Okay, great. What is the vibe? Okay, great. Let's put together the Pinterest board. All right, now what venue do I want that matches this, right? And so it comes one step at a time, but people need to remember manifestation does have this undertone of you need to take action. That's how you are honoring your decision.
I remember last summer I was walking and you were one of my favorite podcasters to listen to. And on one particular walk, everything you said was just resonating with me. And I had just retired from 31 years of teaching and was trying to figure out my next chapter and was a little interested in doing some coaching. And so listening to your podcast at the very end of it, you mentioned that you were doing a retreat. So at the time, I wasn't sure how old that podcast was. So I came home. I remember looking you up online and seeing that there was a possibility, but it was like in 2 weeks to go to Greece and Italy. And so there was something that was like pulling me to do that. And I reached out to you, and after lots of questions and hesitating, I took the plunge, which for me was huge, to fly halfway across the world to meet you and strangers. And I remember when I realized that I was going to be the oldest person on there because I hadn't even thought of that. I guess in my eye, I'm like, 23, 24, 27-year-olds do this? Anyway, so when I got there, I remember just that feeling of, ooh, did I make the right choice? Am I a good fit here? And so during some of the workshops that you held for us, it just was so nice. It was almost like a training for me to do the work that I'm doing now. And I just noticed that all of my experiences, and you helped me see this, that all of my life experiences had prepared me for this, that I didn't need to go get another degree, and I had taken enough psychology courses. I had all the degrees I needed to do this, but more the life experience. And so I think when people are doubting themselves, what's some advice you could give for someone who's like in that step and they're like wanting to shift and they're feeling that nudge, but sometimes we just doubt ourselves when we get in our own way?
Yeah, it happens all of the time. I think it's a normal human reaction. And I think that's something that I always like to remind my clients is like, this is so normal that you're feeling this way. Like, it's actively your brain wanting to protect you because it's the unknown, it's scary, it's different, it's new. And I often use this quote like, the level of success you're going to achieve is the equivalent of the level of unknown you can handle. Like, the amount of uncertainty you're willing to hold in your body is the same amount of success you're going to create. Like, the most successful people I know are always doing something new and different and crazy. So when I bring that context in of like, okay, well, it's unknown, it's new, it's uncertain. I don't know how it's going to work out. So I'm having this doubt, but I also know if it's super unknown, it's going to be really fucking successful. So I like to frame it with that. But in general, when we just start with the doubt that we're feeling, it's really important to me to shift limiting beliefs. Like, that was the baseline of my journey when I had to start changing my mindset of like, okay, study abroad. I don't know anybody. I'm making this vow to myself. I want to make this big change. Like, this is really scary. What if nobody likes me? What if I fail? What if nothing changes, right? So then our brain starts to go there. And when you're dealing with self-doubt and you're feeling on the edge of something, it is always worth betting on yourself. I think like the women who leap always land. And sometimes it's a rocky landing, and sometimes you're going to somersault out of it, and sometimes you're going to be a little scratched up. But like, that's just life. And it's really important to look at our limiting beliefs as a limiting belief of like, yeah, what if nobody likes me? Well, that's super limiting. What if I make 3 brand new best friends? I don't need the whole class to love me. What if I make 3 new friends? Okay, great. What if I fail and I complain one day? Well, I will get back up and I will start my vow over again tomorrow. And I'm not going to shame myself for it, because the whole point is becoming somebody new, not repeating the past. And just looking at them and naming the emotions and saying, this is a limited perspective from a past version of myself, from a scared version of myself. And it's not who I'm going to choose to be. I'm going to choose to lean into this decision. I'm going to choose to lean into the unknown, into this calling, and I'm going to trust myself. I think that's the other half of it, is a lot of people don't trust themselves. And that's where the doubt feels debilitating at times.
Yeah, good word. Okay, you keep referencing this, and I want to touch on this. At one point during the retreat, you stepped away and you went into your room, and we didn't know it at the time, but you had found out that our flight from Greece to Italy had been canceled. And so the plans fell apart. You went in and you didn't alarm anyone. I mean, you're 27 years old. You have all of these women there. We're just out at the table having breakfast and just thinking you're in there, taking a long bath. But the next thing we knew, we were on a private yacht to catch a private jet to Italy. So watching you and then having you come out and share that exciting news, but then to have you say, this was actually plan B, C, D, E, I don't know, because some of the issues you had with flights. So to me, you're so young, and I just was so in awe of watching you handle that like I couldn't have at 53 when I was there. So I just want to ask you, what is happening internally for you during moments like that?
Honestly, nothing but problem solving. I swear to you. Actually, even, and I don't think I shared this with you guys at the retreat afterwards, one of our dinners, we were out at a restaurant in Greece. I had like stepped down. I think it was our last night in Greece. I had stepped down onto the beach to make a phone call because there was another issue with the plane situation. And like, nobody knew. I just remember telling Caleb, like, I'll be right back. And like going and taking a call on the beach, like praying my phone would stay connected to the Wi-Fi just to like get the worst news. And I was like, okay, I'm going to figure that out when I have better Wi-Fi when we get back to the villa. Hang up the phone. Everyone's eating gelato. I'm like, this ice cream looks amazing. How's everyone feeling? Another glass of wine. Like, let's go. To me, it's just nothing is happening but problem solving. Even that morning, waking up and being like, oh my gosh, everything's fallen apart. Okay. I just look at it very objectively because as soon as you add in the emotion, that's when our heart starts racing and we don't know how we're going to pull it together and the doubt comes in. I have trained myself now to just not go there. It wasn't always like that, but now I just don't. It's like, let me deal with it and then we can process this after and see like, oh my God, that was crazy. I can't believe we pulled this off. Look at this amazing boat. This actually worked out better. We got this like private lunch almost. So for me, I shut off all the emotion and I'm like, great, logic. What's the solution? Who do I need to call? How do we need to solve this? And my husband would describe me as one of two ways. He says, boss CEO, 40 years old, Mikayla, or like 5-year-old little girl, silly, fun Mikayla. It's one or the other. And oftentimes there's nothing in the middle. And so for me in those moments, it's like, okay, boss, 40 years old, running a massive company, Mikayla just clicks into place and she just solves the problem.
It was fabulous to watch. And I love to hear that you have some of those normal panic moments on the inside. That was actually my next question, and you answered it. It is something, that calmness that you have to just practice and that you become, because so many people, if you're given bad news or just like, for me, I'm a type A, and so I plan, and organize, and then if something goes wrong, you're like, oh. And so often it's easy to just complain and verbalize to anybody around you, but then that drags them down and just shares that worry or that concern, and you did not do that. You just kept it all in and quietly stepped away and dealt with it. And so do you ever get stressed?
Used to. I would say I actually did a podcast on this a couple of years ago that after a certain point, I just decided to stop associating myself with stress because it didn't do anything for me. And I think at a certain point, it served me to like name that feeling in the body, right? Where your body is like, okay, we're going into panic. It starts with stress. And so after a while, I was like, telling myself I'm stressed out actually doesn't help because I always felt like there was a different emotion. Like instead of stress, overwhelm would be a better way to describe it, where it's like stress, but it wasn't really stress. I was feeling pressure to execute in a certain way. So I felt like stress is kind of this umbrella term that no longer served me. So I don't identify with ever being stressed out. There will be times where I'm overwhelmed and I'm like, oh, there is a lot on my plate. My system is on like overdrive. So I'll have moments like that. But I feel like now I just pull up like the emotions wheel and I'm like, what's the actual word that we're feeling here? Because that helps me deal with the situation better. If I say, oh, I'm stressed out, there's, some basic self-care things you might do to help. But if I say I'm overwhelmed, it's like, okay, well, let me get all this down on paper. And then that can help me make a better game plan.
I love that. And I think that the older I get, I didn't really realize or focus on my nervous system and name those things. But as you get older, overwhelm is a great word, and to really focus. And I wish I would have known that earlier, especially raising kids, just to really just get into my nervous system and to see where it was and how to regulate that more.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting work. I really love that your work, and you've coached so many people, is not about fixing people. It's just really focused on their identity and helping them really get out of their own way so that they can experience joy and growth. So, I will have a couple of quick questions for you about the coaching experiences you've done. Who do you have to stop being for people you coach to build the life that they want?
Who do you have to stop being? The first thing that I think about is a battle almost everybody has. It's when we have those what ifs and we're at those limiting beliefs, and you can either bet on your failure or you can bet on your success. And that is a conversation I have with almost every single person because we all experience that doubt. And it's like, if you want to go build the life of your dreams, you have to bet on yourself and you have to bet on your success. Because even if you've got one foot over here or one foot over there, even if you've got a pinky toe betting on your fear and your failure and your downfall, you're never going to fully be in the dream life. And you could achieve everything. And I've had phases like this where I've achieved so many things and I don't feel it because I've got one pinky toe afraid it's going to fall apart, for example. And so it's like you have to let go of the part of you that wants to bet on failure as a cushion in case you fall, which you don't, because even if you do, you pick yourself back up and you go figure it out. So that's something that you have to leave behind when you're creating your dream life.
Is there a common identity that you see women stuck that they have to let go of?
People pleasing, people pleasing. 100%. And I don't feel it's something that I personally have had to overcome my life because I've always just felt so different and already kind of on my own little orbit. But a lot of women struggle with this, with either wanting to please their partner and their family or their friends, work. They don't want to let people down. And so it's like, okay, well, I really, really want this, but I don't want to let this person down because then this could happen and that could happen. So it's the people pleaser mentality.
Yeah, and then you're not true to yourself, and you see that I've seen that in my own life and in people that I'm working with that, yeah, they give up on their own dreams because they're so worried about what others think, even on social media.
Yeah.
How do you know when you're dealing with something? So we have fears, and sometimes fears are warranted.
Mhm.
So how do you know when fear is just a warning versus maybe just a little initiation into this?
I think for me, I look at fear as something I can always overcome. So this could be a hot take. Some people are like, okay, well, there's a fear that maybe I should practically put X, Y, and Z in place and more the warning sign. And I just don't even buy into that philosophy. I'm like, a fear, I can overcome it. Like I'm gonna always figure it out. And so for me, I look at that as like, okay, it comes up and it's back to who do I need to be? Because I think on like a business example, people will launch a coaching program. They're like, okay, well, what if I go all in on this and nobody signs up? What and I quit my job and nobody joins? Well, in my head, it's like, okay, great, we can think that, but who's the version of you who sells out the program? Who's the version of you who is willing to do whatever it takes to get clients? Who's the version of you who is building this really sustainable, solid business with a great community and people that always want to join? And so I think it's a framework because we could always go back and forth with our minds, but it's who do you want to choose to be? And are you willing to lean more into that than a potential fear? Because there's always a practical, reasonable protection fear we could go down. And I just don't choose to live my life that way, I guess.
So if someone listening right now is feeling a pull to do something different, I mean, anything from going back into the dating world to asking someone at school to be their friend, to retiring and doing a new job, or to, jaunting across the world to go on a retreat, but they don't quite feel ready. What advice would you give them?
You're never going to feel ready. Never, ever, ever. You probably didn't feel ready when you decided you're going to come on the retreat. Sometimes I don't feel ready. Even when I think about the big conference I'm hosting this year, I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't feel ready." And I think ready is a lie that we've been sold over time. And there's so much preparation you can do, but you don't ever feel ready. And the people that feel overly prepared, my honest belief is they waited too long. I think we can master a version of ourselves where we're like, let me jump in with 2 feet. And if I fall on my face, I will stand back up. And it's just more experience and more feedback that I get to have. And then let me jump again, and then I'll stand back up. And it's just this mentality of, I'm always going to do what it takes. So let me go and let me do that. And if they don't like me, they don't like me, but somebody will. If I launch it, if it doesn't work, well, I'm going to go make it work. If I go across the world and do this thing and it doesn't pan out the way I thought it was, I always get what I need, whether it was what I thought I needed or not. So it's everything comes down to identity for me, for sure.
That reminds me of becoming a mom. So the first time it's exciting, you don't know what you're getting yourself into and you think you're ready. And I had our first son. And then I remember going to my mom and saying, "Whew, I don't know if I can handle another one. Like the first one is so much work and you feel like you do lose part of your identity and gain a new identity. And I remember her saying, "You're never going to be ready. But trust me, it just all works out and you will love it." And it truly, that is how it has happened, And then I had a third one and they just all fit in and everything just works out. But you have to like take that leap of faith to
Yeah.
go with it and not overthink things.
And it's so scary. I even remember on my wedding day, like walking up, we did a courthouse wedding, like walking up to the courthouse, and my father-in-law was like, he gave me a big hug. He's like, "You look beautiful. My in-laws are incredible. I love them." And he's like, "It's the day you've always been dreaming of." And in my head, I was like, I have never thought about this day until I got engaged, which actually got engaged 4 days before I got married. Yeah, and so I was like, I've only
Talk about a leap.
talk about a leap of faith, and we had only been dating for 6 months. So I'm like, leaping is my life. I'm like, I have not thought about this. And I remember after he said that, I was like, oh my God, I don't feel ready for this. Like knowing I wanted to marry Austin, but being like, oh my God, I don't feel ready. And it's like, no, you are. It's the perfect timing. And I always think like sometimes you don't feel ready and we feel like maybe it's not the right time. People talk to me a lot about like divine timing, or they'll see a sign or something won't work out and they'll think, well, it's just not the right time. And I say like things always happen exactly how they're supposed to. And it always makes sense in 6 months or less than. Like you don't feel ready, but you leap in. And within the next 6 months, you're going to be like, no, I actually was so ready. That's exactly why it had to happen. That's exactly why I had to go do it scared. Or, oh, I thought I was ready at this time and I was taking the leaps and it looked like it wasn't working out, but it actually was building. So at the perfect time, it could leap forward. So it's like it always ends up panning out and we never feel ready. But the universe has a way of working things that we just don't get to see on the earth side.
Mhm. That reminds me of anybody on a health journey, and you never feel ready because you're like, "Oh, the holidays are coming up, or I have book club next week, or and you keep putting it off. But it is one of those things that you're always going to have obstacles, and so you just have to take the leap. And as long as you're making small steps forward to help you get there, you'll get there.
Yeah, you always
Consistency.
get there. You always get where you need to go as long as you stay on the path. Like that is truly what I think when I'm talking with a lot of clients who are on a health journey, they want to manifest the love of their life, they're starting a business. I'm like, you are going to get where you want to go at 100,000%. Like I have no fear, I have no doubt about that, but you have to stay the path. And there will be days where it feels like it's not working out, it's not going to plan, it's not on the timeline. You're like, maybe I wasn't ready. And you just have to look at those thoughts and say, I hear you, I love you, I see you, but I am sticking to my decision because I know I'm going to get where I need to go every single time.
I really hope that one of my sons listens to the podcast. And if I could flash red flashing lights, this is the next section I want them to hear. You recently took your mom to Paris for a Christmas present, and then you returned with Austin, your husband, over New Year's Eve. And so you've traveled so many places. And I want to know a couple questions. One is your favorite place to go.
I have two. One is Paris. Paris is the best, and your sons need to take you. But any of them, you'll have about the best time with any of them. So Paris and Bali, Bali in Indonesia. I lived in Indonesia during 2020 when everybody was fighting over toilet paper and the world was shutting down. I was at the beach club in the gym. Sorry to say, but it is the most like mothering, healing island ever. So those are my two favorite spots.
Awesome. How about any travel tips that maybe are a little bit, people just don't even realize are available to them?
Book business class by buying miles. This is like so practical of me. Most of the time when I'm flying internationally, I'm only flying business because it is a long trip and I am also very tall and I need more leg room than the average person. And one thing I thought for a long time was like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me so long to be able to pay for these like long haul first class flights. But I book almost all of them using miles and not even like the credit card point side of things, because that's a whole other game. But like just going on like American Airlines website, looking up flights using miles and then buying the exact amount of miles, you can pay like 50% off if you just book with miles.
I have to look into that. Yeah, I remember you mentioning that, but I wasn't really sure how that worked. Interesting. Okay, so your work has shifted over the years, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like now your focus is on women, helping them level up their business. Maybe it's coaching or another field. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so listeners who want to connect with you on your podcast or social media, how can they find you?
You can find me in all the places. On Instagram, I'm at the Mikayla Jai, same as TikTok. On YouTube, I'm Mikayla Jai. My podcast is called Mindset Magic and Manifestation Podcast on any and all platforms all over the place. It is an amazing time. And I have lots of different programs where I help women with their social media, with their business, making consistent sales. But we also have a couple of more manifestation based programs, specifically on shifting your identity, manifesting money, manifesting what you want. So come follow me on Instagram and the podcast. That's where you'll see all of the things.
Definitely a good listen, a podcast if you need a good kick in the butt and just need to start get moving or to connect with her on a deeper level. Mikayla, thank you so much for holding this space for us, for me, for the conversation, but just for also just creating and kind of waking me up inside when I first got to meet you in Italy and in Greece. And the retreat with your guidance just gave me so much clarity, reminded me that experience counts and that wisdom grows and accumulates. So sometimes I think it's those moments to just really realize that you don't have to ask for permission and you have what it takes and to just take the leap. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for being such a light. I know even at the retreat, your presence was so helpful for everybody there. It's like that's one thing I love about retreats. It's like you get to learn and grow, but you also get to contribute to the space. I know so many women loved how you give back, how you show up for people, the ways that you are just so generous. So thank you for inspiring my community. And I'm obviously so happy to be connected to you. And I wish we could go do another wine tour together.
Yes, we will have to. Yes.
We need a
Okay.
Paris
Thank
trip.
you. Yes. Yes. I know. I tried to get in on that one. Maybe next time.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Love you so much.
Love you. Thank you.
That was awesome. Good job. Thank you.
That was such a great conversation. There's so many nuggets.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I loved how open you were in sharing. I wasn't sure if you would want to share all of the stuff from your past. And it just, I think, gives so much clarity to who you are and your strength and your growth. I just adore you. I think you are amazing. So thanks. And so I'm excited because you're like the mastermind behind me doing all of this. So it's fun to have you.
So excited when you reached out. I was like, oh yeah, you have this nice little pitch of why I should come on. I was like, you could have just been like, want to come on my podcast? Yeah. I'm like, you don't even need to say all these nice things. But I'm like, oh yeah, I just love you so much. And I'm so happy you're doing this.